following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is CareGiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'm so glad that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you. If you're a family caregiver, if you're caring for someone who can't care for themselves, especially someone with some form of memory loss, dementia, could be Alzheimer's, could be vascular dementia, could be Parkinson-related dementia, whatever it is, then you know that this is something that is not easy. As a matter of fact, it's a very difficult job to do. So this show was created to help caregivers to navigate that caregiving process by giving you lots of great information, expertise from our guest on the show. And so today we have another wonderful person. I'm very excited. So my question to you today is, if you are caring for someone at home, you might be an adult child, you might be a spouse, you may or may not realize that it's progressing to the point where you're super stressed out, or maybe you realize you can't do it all for a number of reasons. Whatever it is, it comes a time when you need more help, and one person can't do it alone. And people try, but most time they fail because their health fails. They get agitated to the point where they're creating more problems rather than solving the problems. Lots and lots of details that go into caregiving, and this is why we created this program, so that you could get all that information and more to help you. So if you are caring for someone at home, maybe or maybe not, you've thought about getting someone to help you. So that's what this show is about, is answering the questions. When do I get someone else in the home to help? How do I know who to call? How do I know if it's going to be a great fit? How do I know how many hours I need to have? How do I know that it's going to work? These are very valid questions. And here today to help us answer all of those questions and more is Elaine Forgy. And Elaine is the CEO and president of Elder Care at Home. Elder Care at Home is a private duty home health agency or organization, and she is here to give us all of the answers. I'm so glad to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marcia.
I am so glad because I've known you a lot of years.
Yes.
And we've worked together helping families over the years. So you're the perfect person to be here today to talk about this subject, because it is something that caregivers struggle with all the time. And we're going to actually talk about the pros and cons, because there's pros and cons to everything, even having help at home. So first, tell me about starting Elder Care at Home, why you did it. I know you have some history there.
I started Elder Care at Home with my husband 20 years ago. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And when we started it, we wanted to focus on those that had memory loss. So from the very beginning, since our inception, our core focus has been on helping families that have a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia to keep them at home as long as possible. So that's what we've been doing for 20 years. You know, we really focus on helping adult children and spouses who are struggling to figure out, how do I do this effectively? You know, how can I provide good care to my parent and still have a life? And how do I deal with the guilt sometimes that comes with this?
Yeah, that's a big one too. We're going to get into that. Is there a reason why you specifically chose memory care when you set up your business?
Actually, there is. Mary Barnes from Alzheimer's Community Care, back when I owned another agency, I would call upon her when I was doing marketing with my little paper brochures, which were really cheesy. And I called upon her, and she just introduced me to the world of Alzheimer's that I knew absolutely nothing about. And I guess it was because of her influence that kind of led me down this path to where, you know, when we had an opportunity to start our business, we said, this is what we want to do. It just struck a chord in me, you know? It was just something.
Touched your heart.
It did. It touched me, and it does every day, all these years later.
Well, congratulations, 20 years.
Thank you.
That's great. You were, as Mary, one of the innovators, right there with, you know, me being at Arden Courts
Right.
for 19, 20 years,
Yeah.
helping people down this path, helping them navigate Alzheimer's. And really, that long ago was really innovating because there wasn't a lot out there at that time.
There wasn't.
Right. And of course, now I think there's more, never enough, in my opinion, because caregivers always need more. And to learn more and to be educated on all the new things that are out there that can help them. But as an innovator, you have been in the trenches and you've helped so many people. And so I'm so glad that you're here today to lend that expertise for home health. So let's talk a little bit about the home health situation, because I know there's a lot of confusion with people when you talk about home health. They maybe never had an opportunity to have to investigate that before. So let's talk about how to even start, if or when to start. Let's even back it up a little bit more. Let's take a scenario. We're going to talk about a lot of different cases here and scenarios, and you might find yourself in one of those scenarios. But let's say that is an adult child, a daughter, who works full-time, and her mother has come to live with her because mom was just starting to get a little older, and daughter thought it would be better for mom to move down to Florida and be with her. But she was okay at home alone, and the daughter would come home from work, take care of her, spend the weekends with her. But now things are starting to change. So let's talk about some of the changes that might be happening, things that mom might be doing or saying that should be a red flag to that daughter who might consider now needing some more help.
Sure. So some of the red flags that you can look for are usually changes in eating, changes in personal care. I'm working with a family recently that is a very similar situation.
You didn't tell me about that before.
I didn't. So you said story. So what happened is this adult daughter has her mom with her, and some of the clues that she saw that caused her to pick up the phone and finally reach out was she was coming home from work and food that had been left for mom to eat was still in the refrigerator. So she knew that there was something wrong. You know, why isn't she eating?
But wait, Elaine, maybe mom made a peanut butter sandwich, and so maybe the daughter was wrong because the food that she made for her to warm up in the microwave, for example, maybe the mom didn't want that.Maybe the mom had a peanut butter sandwich. Maybe that's what happened.
Or maybe she doesn't know how to use a microwave anymore.
Exactly.
And that's what we see more frequently than not.
I had to, I'm playing devil's advocate out there, as you know.
Right.
You know what I'm doing.
Right.
Because this is what sometimes people think. Oh, well, the food's still there, but she probably ate something else.
And I think sometimes it's easier to think that. You know, sometimes it's easier for us to just think that, you know, mom made a sandwich, because to go to that other place where, oh my goodness, did she forget how to use the microwave? That's frightening.
Or did she forget that she was even hungry? Or did she forget to even go and look at the refrigerator for something to eat? And you don't know.
Right.
And if you ask them, they're either going to make up a story because they don't know the answer, or they just won't have anything to say to you because of their short-term memory loss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the other things that we look for is that mom's not bathing. She may tell you that she's bathed, but you can go into the bathroom and see that the soap's in the same place or the towels haven't been used. And that's kind of a warning sign, because sometimes we don't stop bathing because we have Alzheimer's. We stop bathing because we got scared, we slipped, and we didn't want our daughter to know. So now we're not going to tell you, but we don't want to get back in that shower. But we don't want to raise our hand and say, I need help. I'd feel comfortable if someone was here to help me. So those are just a couple of things that we can look for. And then some confusion too, sometimes forgetting to take medications would be another, gentle reminder that maybe we need to have an assessment done and see what we can do.
What about the mom at home alone during the day that becomes vulnerable with people calling on the telephone? Have you experienced people telling you that mom or dad talked to people on the phone and maybe got into trouble?
Yeah, financially.
Yes.
Giving out credit card numbers, ordering things online. When you're home alone all day as an older adult, sometimes you're so bored, you don't have much choice but to turn on the TV. And so we do see a lot of older adults that are watching television and are placing orders, who are opening themselves up to scams, but they're not aware that they're doing that because they don't think that way. Why would somebody do that to me?
Right.
They're just not there.
And there comes a point in time when someone does have the dementia that they are vulnerable because they just don't have the cognitive abilities to reason and to think things through. Is
Exactly.
this plausible? Is this reasonable? Is this situation where they're asking me to give them donations and I'm going to give a credit card? Should I not be worried here? Like you said, they don't think about those kinds of things. So a lot of older adults can be scammed and can actually get into a lot more trouble if they have some crooks and some leery people that are looking to do bad.
Right.
So it is scary for someone to be home alone and not to be saying they're childlike, but a lot of times they have childlike behaviors because of the dementia. So this is where we're going with this, everybody, that, home is great. Everybody wants to be home as long as possible. And that's why you started the company. You just said to keep people home as long as possible. However, what we're going to talk about today is when it's not possible, when it's time to make some changes, when it's time to get some help and try to stay home. But eventually we're going to look at those pros and cons that might necessitate a little bit more help being brought to that family as a whole, to the daughter and to the mother, of course.
Right.
So mom is doing these things. Daughter is worried. So she comes to you and says, I think I need some help in the home with mom. So what would you do next?
So normally we do a meet and greet. I think that's important too. We try to include the older adult as much in the decision making as possible if they're able to participate. So we go out to the home and we just sit and chat, kind of like we're doing right now. We have a conversation, get to know them pretty well. If we begin to provide care, we're going to be in it for the long haul, until we have to, look at placement as an alternative. But initially, that meet and greet is an opportunity for us to really get to know that family dynamic. We always ask, what is keeping you up at night? When you lay in bed at night, what is keeping you up? And sometimes that conversation with the adult daughter will take place over the phone during our intake process. But what's keeping you up at night? The goal is crisis prevention, not crisis intervention. So if we can talk with her and give her some examples of how home care services sometimes can prevent a crisis from occurring. She doesn't want to get that call at work that her mom's just been transported to the hospital.
Right.
And we use that time to get to know the older adult because we want to make a good caregiver match, right? You want to send someone that she's going to not maybe love having in the house, but that she's going to at least enjoy and tolerate having in the home.
And that's very important.
It is.
To be successful,
Right.
for it to work, really.
Right.
And so how do you match up the right person with the potential customer? How do you determine who's best fit for that?
Well, it's a pretty in-depth process when we're meeting with the family. So we're asking a lot of questions and really talking with the client themselves about what type of person would you like? Do you want someone like me that talks nonstop? Or would you prefer somebody a little bit more sedate? Do you want someone that's upbeat and enthusiastic? Or would you prefer someone, a little quieter? and what common interests might they have? You know, do you like to go to movies? Do you like to go shopping? You know, what do you do for fun? Or what are some of the things you no longer do that you wish you could do again if you had someone to do them with you? You know, and then we take all that information back to our office and we have a meeting, a staff meeting, and together we brainstorm and try to select some individuals that we think, wow, she'd be perfect.
Knowing what you know
Knowing
about
what we
both
know,
parties.
know about both parties, and then we let them meet them, and they can decide who they feel would be the best bet.
Can they meet more than one person?
They absolutely can. And any agency that you work with should always allow you to interview as many people as you'd like. Do the aides like that? Not necessarily, because they've already been interviewed by us. But it's important now, these days. It's important for you to be comfortable with who's coming into your home.
Well, you want them to click.
Exactly.
And if they click, that's a good fit going forward. So I have talked to caregivers and said, look, if the first person that comes, if you don't feel that they meet your needs, if they're not clicking, if you just don't feel really good about them, please do not hesitate to tell the agency, send somebody else. Maybe there's a better fit. And I've known caregivers that have done that 3 or 4 times before they found somebody that really was the perfect fit for mom or dad.
Yeah, we offer a My Caregiver Match Guarantee. So if anyone, if we're not successful the first time, and sometimes we're not, they don't have to pay our fee. You know, we want our clients to be happy, and we don't want them to cancel services with us because we did not recommend the right person. And so we have to stand behind that, you know.
Yeah, that's
so we
wonderful.
try to do that so that that family, we want that adult daughter to be able to exhale a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
We want her to say, "Phew, okay, I can go to work now and not worry about my mom."
Right, someone's there.
Yeah, someone's there.
Leading the way, the head of the ship, so to speak.
Yeah. As a friend, as a companion, maybe not initially as a nurse, maybe not someone that has to worry about incontinence care, for example, but someone that is a comfortable presence in the home that the daughter can rely on and the patient or the client themselves can trust.
So we're going to take a real quick first commercial break. And when we come back, I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into this
brother.
situation. So we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. My special guest today is Elaine Forgy. She is the president and CEO of Elder Care at Home. It's a private duty home health company, and we're talking about when you need more help at home. How do you go about it? What do you do and how that happens? And Elaine is an expert at that, owning the company for 20 years and been around the block a few times with helping caregivers navigate this difficult path, especially when it comes to memory care. So, Elaine, just before break, we talked about matching up a caregiver in the home with that client who is maybe forgetful, needs a little more help, needs some cueing, maybe is lonely, needs a companion. But the monkey wrench I want to throw at you is, what about the client, the potential client who says, I don't need anybody. I don't need someone to watch me. I don't need to have a babysitter. I don't want them. If they come, I'm going to throw them out. I don't need help. What happens in a case like that? How can you resolve that?
So we see that a lot,
That's why I asked you.
Thanks. So we see that a lot, depending upon how the conversation began, and we try to talk with our adult children before they have that conversation. We'll preface how the client reacts. So nobody wants help. Nobody wants to change their clothes in front of a stranger. Nobody wants someone to say, don't forget to take your medication. Oftentimes, when we first begin care with someone with memory loss, the answer is very quite simple. We're not there for you. We're there for your daughter. Because remember, usually the client isn't at the point where they need personal care assistance. They may need some cueing and guiding, but they don't need a lot of hands-on care. So if the adult daughter speaks to her parent and talks to them about how this is what she's doing for herself. I need someone to come in and do some light housework. I'm too busy at work. I just can't get everything done. I want someone to go to the grocery store. I want someone that can help me. I'm a mom, and I know that if my daughter said that to me, that she needed help, I would do anything to help her. So when you say, will you help me? Most people will raise their hand, memory loss or not, and say, of course. So I think that helps a lot. And we use that quite frequently to persuade older adults that don't want care to let someone in.
And there you go. You said the key word, persuade.
It's persuading, and it's not easy. And then we have caregivers that say, well, I'm not comfortable doing that. Well, I understand that maybe now's not the time to start. There's some other things we can do, other alternatives. One would be adult daycare, but there are other alternatives. But usually what I have found in my 20 years of doing this is once the aid is through the door, after a day or two go by, it's forgotten.
Yes.
Not because they have memory loss, but because, oh, wow, this isn't as bad as I thought.
And there's somebody to talk to.
And I like her, and she takes me places.
Yes.
And we do things, and
Yeah.
I'm not sitting in front of the TV all day.
Yeah, so it works. But it's all about the approach, too.
It is.
So you have to be careful as an adult child or a spouse, maybe having someone come into the home about what you say, when you say it, and how you say it. All those three things are very important in presenting your case, so to speak, right?
Exactly.
And so if you go to an experienced home health company, go to an Elaine, to her people, they'll explain that to you. It's difficult when caregivers aren't prepped about what to say and when to say it and how to say it, because it can make the situation worse if it's not really done in the right way. Because face it, there's no one right way to do everything, but there are better ways to do things, right?
Right.
So you want to be prepped and know how to do all of that. So we have the help in the home. So let's talk about the pros and cons of having help in the home. So we'll just kind of go back and forth.
Sure.
So the pro of having help in the home, obviously a pro to the daughter, is that the daughter's going to have peace of mind. She's going to feel good, like you said, about, okay, I don't have to worry as much, because if something happens, I know that I can get a phone call, someone's there to intervene, and somebody will call me if they really need to call me. So it gives peace of mind to the family.
Right.
Your turn.
More pros?
Or cons. We're going to go back and forth.
Safety's huge.
Okay.
I think safety is a big pro. The older you get, regardless of your cognitive status, you have risk factors, falling, burning, anything can happen in the home. So I think safety is a big concern.
Okay, so we're going to do pros and cons back and
Yeah.
forth, whatever we
Yeah.
think of. A pro is stimulation. So let's say you have a mom who's home and you don't want her to watch TV all day, and she needs someone to talk to. People need people. They need to have people around, and better to talk to someone there in person that you can trust instead of her answering the phone and finding out a stranger has engaged her and could get her into trouble. So I think that the stimulation, having someone in the home, someone to talk to be with, it's stimulating because they can do things together, and it's also social that they can spend time together and talking and engaging. So that definitely is a pro.
Right. Another pro is the ability for the aide to take mom to doctor's appointments and that are not critical, right? So there's a lot of appointments that daughters sometimes have to take off from work to do that can be delegated to a good home health aide or certified nurse's aide that can do that for her, and then give accurate information back. So that's always important too. Medication reminding is another pro.
Yes, all of those things, making sure that they eat.
Healthy.
Healthy, making sure they stay healthy, that they're eating that food that was in the refrigerator
Right.
and not skipping the meals and making sure. So a lot of good oversight. But now I think of a con, and a con would be if mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and now she's progressing to the point where her behavior is changing. And maybe all of a sudden, after she's had this lovely caregiver in her home helping her for 6 months, a year even, or longer, all of a sudden, mom turns on her and get out of my house. I don't want you here. I don't like you. And decides that she's going to shut her out and shut the door and lock the door. That's definitely con because that happens too.
It does.
Okay, so that's not a good thing.
No.
And I think it's good to talk about the cons because these are things that really do happen and people need to be aware of it.
A con also is sometimes there's a change in the client's physical condition, which makes private duty home care cost prohibitive. Whether it is that they need some type of treatment that isn't covered under their insurance, or whether it is that there's been a change in financial status. Those are big cons.
So when you say financial status, a little bit more about that. Why is that a con with home health?
Well, I think that there's a conception sometimes that home health might be forever, but what I've seen is that home health, like most things in life, is good for a period of time. So there comes a point where if you're paying us around the clock for round-the-clock care, that's very expensive.
Right, so
you
you're
know?
talking about con meaning having to have so much home health care in the home that it gets so expensive that it actually can be more than alternatives.
It can be, but there's also when we see the quality of life change as well. And I think that is the biggest, I don't want to say that it's a con, but I think that when the patient's quality of life is no longer optimal at home, not because we can't make it that way, but because we have to be realistic. If they're becoming combative, if no one we send in is working, if we are now adding stress to an already stressed out family caregiver, it's time to look at alternatives. And that's sometimes not home care.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's time to look at making some tough decisions and having some new conversations that help move that process forward.
Right, and another con could be that you talked about health, right? So if a caregiver is with someone day in and day out and the client is changing, she's exhibiting some maybe medical things, is the in-home private duty caregiver, whoever it might be, are they equipped to recognize those things? And because they're not going to be able to diagnose certain things, are they going to be aware enough to be astute enough to know things are changing so that they can nip things in the bud before they get too bad, right?
Right.
So it depends on, of course, every case is different. And it depends on the client, depends on the experience and training of the caregiver. And we're talking in general here. But that could be a con because you want somebody who is trained, especially if they're in the home with someone who's more compromised medically with a lot of medications. There could be some interactions with medications. They could be maybe starting to faint or whatever it might be. Is that person going to be able to handle that? And that could be a con because it's one person. You know, it's one person. Can one person handle a certain emergency that might come up? So just something to think about.
Right. Right. That's important. And, you know, they are certified nurses, aides, and home health aides. They're not registered nurses. They're not licensed practical nurses. The scope of what they're licensed to do and can do under our license is limited. And unless they are totally undressing your parent, they're not going to know whether they have the beginning of a bed sore. And that's an example of a con that can lead to, a whole host of problems.
Right, because if a daughter's not the one who's bathing mom or dressing mom and you have a home health aide doing it, and maybe they see something on the foot, it could be the start of something that needs to be attended to, right? Maybe an ingrown toenail that's now got infected, but nobody really says anything, right? Because it's just something that is there. Start of a pressure point, a pressure sore, where people sit too long or lay in the bed too long or aren't moving around. You're right. Are those things going to be not only recognized, but are they going to be addressed or be told to the responsible party? Right. So those are things just to be aware of. What else do you see that pros and cons for home health?
I think that on a long-term basis, when you have a caregiver that's in the home for a long time, another con is just like all things in life, caregivers move on too. As heartbreaking as it is for the patient and for the family that they're helping, things happen. They have deaths in the family, they leave, they don't come back. I mean, this happens. And that is usually a trigger that now's an opportunity to begin looking at conversations.
I'm really glad that you said that you brought that up, because I wanted to address that, because you have one person taking care of one person in the home, right? And that's that one person. And yes, they have to go away. They have an emergency. They have a family emergency, something like that. Well, if you're with an agency, the agency can replace that person temporarily until they get back, right? But what if you don't go through an agency? What if you just have someone who's caring for mom or dad at home and they have an emergency? They get in a car wreck on the way to your house. They need to go to the hospital because they're sick. Now you're left high and dry with no backup. And what are you going to do? So that's really a con, especially if you're not with an agency who can jump in and provide somebody in an emergency. But that is also very scary, because you get so used to that one person, and now you have to have a substitute, whether it's for long-term or short-term, and mom or dad might not take a liking to them as well, and it might really set them off because it's somebody new. They might become paranoid. They won't like them. There could be a host of things that could go wrong.
Particularly with folks with memory loss.
Yes.
We find it very difficult to make caregiver changes. We have to do it on occasion, but when we do, there's always some type of reaction.
Yes.
For every action, there's an equal reaction.
That's true. So those are some of the pros and cons that people need to be aware of when you're considering having home health in your home to help take care of somebody. A lot of things to consider. We want you to be aware. So when we come back from our commercial break, we're going to talk about when it's time to make those different arrangements and how you go about that. So stay tuned, and we're going to be giving a book away when we come back. So you'll want to be there for that too. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Communities, for making this program possible. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care. They're there to help the person with memory loss and also to help the caregiver. And one of the ways that they help caregivers is by offering lots of resources. And today they'd like to offer you this book. It's a free resource just for you for the asking. It's called the 36-Hour Day book. This is a wonderful book. It's in its 5th edition. It's full of information regarding dementia, caregiving, challenges that you might be facing with helpful hints. You don't want to not have this book. It is something that you may refer to many, many times. So all you have to do is give Arden Courts their toll-free number, give them a call, tell them that you heard about this offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show. They'll get your name and address and make sure they mail the book right to you. So get a pen and write down the number 888-478-2410. Again, 888-478-2410 to get your free copy of the 36-hour day. I highly recommend it. So I'm here today with my guest, Elaine Forgy. She is the CEO and president of Elder Care at Home, among other things we'll be getting to talk to here in a few minutes. Elaine, thank you for being here today. It's a pleasure to have you and learn about all the things that you can share to help caregivers when it comes to home health. We're talking today about home health, the pros, the cons, when home isn't enough. So for the first part of the program, we did list all those pros and cons, and there's a lot to consider, but it can be a lifesaver for the responsible party, meaning the adult child, the person in charge. It could be a guardian that you help. It could be a spouse. It could be just about anybody that you can help take care of somebody. But now let's turn the tables a little bit, because home is not always the best place, and everybody wants to stay at home as long as possible. And I think that's great. I think they should, but the key word is as long as possible. So let's talk a little bit about when home is not enough, why it's not enough, and what are some of the scenarios that people would know. So what would you advise on that?
So oftentimes we're working with adult children and guiding them through that difficult decision making. Home is great, and we can keep a lot of people home, until through end of life care. But for someone that's living with Alzheimer's disease or dementia, sometimes home isn't the best place. It might be up until a certain point. But when we begin to see behavioral challenges, when we begin to see delusions and hallucinations, where safety is now paramount because wandering is becoming almost a desperate attempt. And we find that we have a paradigm shift. Now, although home health is in the home, the family caregiver is back to being a primary caregiver because things are becoming unmanageable. Not necessarily because an agency isn't good or an aid isn't good, but because the quality of life of the person we're caring for has declined. The purpose of home care through our agency is to improve quality of life, not just for the patient that we're providing care to, but for the family caregiver. And I think as the disease progresses, we see an awful lot of folks who just can't enjoy a good quality of life in those four walls. So that's where we begin to have these conversations, kind of like this one, which are difficult but necessary because it's a process, not an event. Making the decision to move your loved one into assisted living or into long-term care begins with conversations, education, information, and then a process, pre-placement, placement, post-placement.
Right. Because you want to plan for it. This isn't something that should happen overnight, because if it does happen overnight, that's usually a crisis situation.
And we try to avoid that at all.
We definitely want to avoid the crises. So we always tell people make a plan. Mm-hmm. So the conversations is part of making that plan, of getting all your ducks in a row and making it a safe, easier, because it's not easy, but easier transition from home to, in the case of dementia, a memory care community. Mm-hmm. And that scares a lot of folks because they're afraid that their spouse, their parent who has the dementia might hate them because they promised to keep them at home. How do you deal with that? I know you have a lot of people that you counsel on that.
We do. We coach a lot of caregivers through this entire process, and I can tell you that what I say to the people that I work with one-on-one is that placement is a gift. At a certain time in your parents' life, it's a gift.
Why is it a gift? Because they feel like they're taking their independence away by taking them out of their home.
Right. Well, the adult child feels that way.
Yes.
But to the person living with dementia, when they are living in an environment with other folks that are just like them, where they have from the minute they wake up in the morning until the minute they go to bed at night, opportunities for cognitive stimulation, socialization, and things over and above what we can do at home one-on-one, their quality of life improves. But what's most important too when we talk to adult children is how nice it is for you to go and sit with your mom as her daughter once again. You know, you're not her nurse, you're not the person telling her to change her Depends or take her meds or why haven't you eating or why aren't you dressed. But now you're with your mom again, and you're going to create memories that you're going to have yourself long after she's gone.
Not the memories of being the caregiver.
Not the memories of being the bad guy. And I think as women caregivers, we have a bullseye on our chest and mom's throwing darts at them all the time.
Yeah.
You know, we're the bad guy.
Yeah.
So it can be a gift.
Well,
and then
I like that, the gift.
It is, the gift. It's a gift.
And what I always say, which is a little bit said in a different way, though, is that you talked earlier about a paradigm shift, right? About how you think about things. And I tell adult children, think of it like this. It's not what you're doing to her, it's what you're doing for her.
That is so important what you just said. Look at when your mom was alert and oriented and chose you to be her power of attorney, she theoretically was saying, look at, if I can't make good decisions about my quality of life, I choose you. You're my person.
Yes.
And one day you may have to do tough stuff, but you know what? I love you and I know I can trust you to do this for me. I want you people to remember that, because that's the hardest thing. We live with so much guilt. We beat ourselves up so badly. And really, you know, I hope one day my children, whoever I appoint to be my power of attorney, I haven't picked one, I've got 3, does things that they know need to be done, even if it's tough, the tough decisions.
And do right by you. What you want, and follow your wishes.
Exactly.
And not necessarily what they would want, because they should be following what you want, what you set up for that time when it comes.
And then not only does the patient's quality of life improve, but then, like I said, the caregivers. And it's so important. But it begins with a conversation.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I like the fact that there are signs, just like there's signs when someone's home alone that they need more help, and you're going to start with home health, because most people do start with home health. But there's also signs when they have had home health that there needs to be that conversation to make a change. And you mentioned about safety, specifically about wandering. And let's talk a little bit about that, because people will say, well, my dad would never wander. Well, no, they don't until they do, and then he's out the door and he's lost. And
he's a silver alert.
And he's, one of our silver alerts, which we see too many of, actually, on the road when we see the signs that someone has escaped, gotten in the car, and they've driven off. But if you keep the doors all locked and you keep the windows all locked, they're a prisoner in their own home. I mean, if you think about it, because in order to be safe, you have to keep everything locked up. They can't really get outside. The caregiver who's home with them is afraid to take them out, because they may escape. They may get away from them. They may run away. They may hit them and get away, right? So that is a really important one, because that does affect the quality of life. So it's almost like one thing affects the other, and the safety and being wanting to get out, wanting to go outside, but not really being able to. Then you're inside, you're isolating, you're surrounded by darkness and no stimulation from being able to get outside and connect with nature, or go places, because your caregiver, whoever's with you, is afraid you're gonna get away. So that's a biggie.
It is a biggie. And it goes to what I said, how is placing your loved one into a memory care community a gift? Well, imagine that same person who now can open up a door and go outside. My gosh, I haven't been able to do that in forever. She's kept me locked up in the house.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And now I can go outside and I can walk and wander. If your loved one is so desperate that they are constantly searching to get away and to escape, and we're forcing them to stay.
That's a sign.
That is a sign that we need to have a conversation.
That's a sign.
It's a sign.
Let's talk about some other signs. What about, matter of fact, I just talked to a caregiver today before the program started, that she's had someone at home while the daughter works, and she's there 5 days a week from 7:30 in the morning till 5:30 at night. And I said, what does your mom do with this caregiver all day while you're at work? And she said, well, they do watch a lot of TV. But my mom was addicted to CNN, but now we try not to let her watch it, because it upsets her. Because if she hears about a tornado or, a hurricane someplace, she thinks it's coming here and thinks it's in the backyard. So now that we've taken away the TV, it's really difficult for this one person in the home as a home health aide to entertain her all day long, because that's exhausting. Let's face it, it's exhausting, and a lot of caregivers just don't have the ability to sustain that over a long period of time. So that's a sign.
It is. And whether you're a family caregiver who's done it on your own or a paid caregiver, it is exhausting. And trying to fill 8 hours a day of appropriate cognitively stimulating activities is a challenge for professionals as well as for home health aides, who might have some training beyond Alzheimer's level 1 and 2 in person-centered care techniques. But if you're beginning to think about it, then it's time to consider having the conversation.
Because deep down inside, I think people know, right? People know.
Just like the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We know.
We know.
We know.
That's what they like.
Yeah.
That's what they need.
Yeah.
It's comfort.
It is.
Yeah. Any other signs that might be happening that would be a reason? Let's talk a little bit about the financial part, because I think sometimes people need to analyze that a little bit more in depth to see, and we mentioned earlier that it can be prohibitive financially, especially when you get to needing more than so many hours of home health. So most people start with how many hours when they first start. Is there a typical amount, and how would they determine how and when to increase that?
Okay, so there are a lot of questions there. So we.
But you don't have dementia, so you can figure it out.
So we have visits from 1 hour to 24-hour round-the-clock care.
Okay.
Everything is fluid when you're dealing with older adults.
Yes.
So at the beginning, they may need care just a few days a week. But as time progresses, they may need round-the-clock care and supervision.
And that gets real expensive. Or when you get to round the clock, and think about this, when it gets to that point, you're getting more than 12 hours, then it goes to 18, and now you're looking at 24. And with that 24 hours, yes, you're getting one person to take care of your loved one. But if you look at the cost, compare that to a memory care, assisted living, the value in what you're getting for the money that you're paying, for the costs that you're paying, and think about the things that a memory care assisted living can provide that you can't have at home, like nursing care. If you had to provide in your home, right, nursing care 24/7 like you can get at a memory care, a caregiver to help with everything that they do with dressing, bathing, toileting, eating, all of that. Entertainment, right, in your home, bringing in a band, bringing in a singer, bringing in some dancers, bringing in other entertainers. Can you do that? Bringing in other people they can connect with, right? Bringing in friends and having them have gatherings. Is that possible? No, it's not possible in a private home. But you're paying a lot of money for one person, where you could take either the same money or less in most cases, and provide better services, more services, and increase what you said, which is paramount, quality of life.
Right.
So I think that is something that a lot of families need to weigh also, is that, yes, I have the wherewithal. Mom's financially secure. She can afford to have someone at her beck and call 24/7. But is that really the best thing for mom?
It's not, oftentimes, because what happens with memory loss and with Alzheimer's disease is our loved ones stop self-initiating. So they're not raising their hand and saying, I'm bored, give me something to do. So we're relying on paid caregivers, some whom are excellent, to fill up those days. But you touched on an important point earlier when you said about the person who's trying to elope constantly. When that happens, live-in care is no longer appropriate, which means that we're now paying round-the-clock in 12-hour shifts. That means multiple caregivers for someone who is already confused, disoriented, suspicious. It's very expensive. And then you have the multiple caregivers, which makes it very difficult for those living with memory loss.
Right.
I wish it wasn't so, but it is.
So you and your staff who help caregivers, you would help them recognize these signs and help them with this tough conversation about what's needed next, right? You're going to give them some help and guide them because they may not know the signs or the triggers.
No, they don't usually, because they're relying they're not caring 24 hours a day. They have someone doing that for them. But interestingly enough, the person that raises their hand and brings these to our attention are the aides themselves. When the aides are calling and saying, I can't do this anymore, I want to get off this case, I can't handle it.
So those caregivers are getting stressed out.
They're getting stressed
It's more
out.
than what they're physically capable of doing.
Or the patient's needs have changed, but the skill set of the caregiver hasn't changed accordingly. Meaning now, they're two-person assist, and it takes two people to get them up and out of bed. I mean, you just can't do it forever.
Yeah.
Home care is great for a lot of folks, and actually folks that don't have Alzheimer's disease or dementia sometimes are able to stay home all the way through end-of-life care. But unfortunately, this disease and these type of mental impairments, they make it very challenging. So we do it as long as we can, as long as quality of life is as best as it can be.
Okay. And at that point, when you have those conversations, then they need to come to a memory care community
That's right.
and ask about that and what's our next step. So go to the professionals. So you start with one person on your team who's a professional in that area, and then go to the next person who's a professional in that area and get all the answers. So come to an Arden Courts, get all the answers, get your questions and concerns, and help to make that transition, because there's a way to make that transition, and we can help caregivers with that. So all that being said, before we run out of time, I do want to mention, it goes so fast, I do want to mention that you also have another resource for caregivers. It's something that we've alluded to in this program, but it's called the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center, which is also under your command, so to speak. And tell me how this got started and what kind of services that the Resource Center can provide.
The Alzheimer's Care Resource Center was founded 5 years ago. My husband and I founded it. It's a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And the reason we founded it is because we realized that there was a gap in Palm Beach County for caregivers, a single place where they could go to get the support and services they need. So from the time of diagnosis through end-of-life care, when you wake up in the morning and you say to yourself, I can't do this one more day, you pick up the phone and you call us. We are strictly for family caregivers. We don't provide any services to patients. We provide counseling, education, information, and we do an awful lot of placements. We work with families that aren't part of elder care at home, some are, some aren't, and help them through this difficult journey it's a journey. To cope with the changes and challenges that you face.
So it's all about the caregiver.
It's all about the caregiver.
And I think that's great because, we partnered with you on many cases. You've referred to us. We referred to you to help people, because that's what it's all about. It's helping people get the information they need when they need it to get them through this. Right. And so this resource center, the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center, you have even support groups, don't you?
We do.
I remember many times I've sent people to your support groups because they need to have someone who's distanced from the situation,
right.
To give their ear and their advice. Someone who's more objective
Right.
With the whole situation. And you've done a great job, because the care and compassion and concern that you show for the caregiver reflects then in how they accept the fact that their, say, spouse has the dementia but has to be in a memory care, to accept it and to understand it. And I think that makes a whole world of difference.
It does.
So
Thank
the
you.
support groups
We provide support groups. We also provide coaching for caregivers, which is one-on-one coaching.
What kind of coaching? What does a caregiver need coached
Oh my
on?
God, she won't get dressed. She won't take a shower. I can't get her to take her medication. She won't stop wandering. What do I do? Where's the book? Okay, so there's no book. I mean, there's a book you're getting if you call the 1-800 number, which is a good idea. But we help you through that. It can be very episodic. You raise your hand, we come in, we help you deal with whatever you're dealing with, and off we go until the next crisis. But that's what it's all about. It's about helping you manage this journey, because caregivers have to survive this.
So are these social workers that
They're
are talking?
psychotherapists, licensed clinical social workers.
Helping the
helping these
people
families.
that understand dementia, understand the challenges
Yes.
that caregivers go through.
Yeah.
And is there a charge for that?
No, we accept Medicare. So Medicare Part B covers a lot of our services. If we have grant funds available, and there are some fee for services that we have grant funds available, and if not, it is a fee for service.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's
Thank
really
you.
important for caregivers to reach out and get those, because things can come up in just a second, and you think you're doing great, and all of a sudden things change on a dime, which it can when you're a
And
caregiver.
they do.
Yeah, and they do. So tell everybody how they can reach the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center.
You can call us at 561-588-4545 or visit our website at allspb.org.
Okay, one more time.
561-588-4545 or online at www.allspb.org.
Thank you. Well, we
Thank
like to
you.
repeat things here because, we do talk about memory loss and it's not funny, but it is good to keep your sense of humor. And I think that's one thing caregivers too need to know, that it's okay to laugh, right?
Yes, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry.
Yeah, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. It's very, very important. What other one word of wisdom before we have to close today that you would give caregivers? And
Reach out. It's a conversation, it's a talk, it's someone that you can pick their brain. It doesn't mean you have to move forward and take action that day, but reach out, know that we're here for you. No matter what side of the table we're sitting on, this community is here to support you.
wonderful. And call Elaine, call the Alzheimer's Care Resource Center, call Elder Care at Home, get some help, ask some questions. And until then, you can tune back in next week, same place, same time, for Caregiver Solutions Info Show. Don't forget to call in for your free 36-hour day book at 888-478-2410. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you for having me.
I loved it.
Thank you,
I hope
me
you
too.
come back again.
I will.
Okay,
Thank you.
awesome. So until then, don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were